natural resources. Next speaker is coming from his elected chief from Canada, what they call Canada again, over to the east from near James Bay region. And so, Randy, are you? He's coming up. So, so we are on schedule. We'll continue these dialogues, and again, take the break as you need it. There's refreshments out there. And Randy? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Good morning to everybody. Just a note of clarification and where I come from and how we're organized. I come from a community of people that do not have a reserve or reservation, and do not have band status, not recognized by Ottawa or by the province of Ontario. I come from a place called Moose Factory, Ontario, southern tip of James Bay. Our people live in two separate communities, and our membership is about 515 people. And we organized ourselves in such a way that we asked some fundamental questions which I think are relevant for this discussion, and I would suggest for every community of people, no matter where you find yourself. We asked ourselves because we had been told by our own people, we've been told by governments, that we aren't a legitimate group of people, that we don't belong in the ways that people are actually recognized today. And so the question we asked ourselves was, who were we before all of these laws, all of these regulations, all of these policies were applied to us? And if we go back to the origins of our nations, if we believe that our source of authority and sovereignty and the foundation upon which we exist as Indigenous people comes from the Creator, then what are we doing making division amongst our people? And so the fundamental question that I think we need to answer is, who were we before laws told us that we are either a status Indian, a non-status Indian, off reserve, on reserve? Those are concepts and ideas that have been imposed upon us, to the point where we're so divided as a people that we don't necessarily understand our connection to each other. Our creation stories are left by the wayside, and we don't value what it is we bring in terms of the full integrity and credibility of our Indigenous nationhood that we all inherit. And to the extent that we continue to play the game that's being told to us that we need to play, we err on the side of the colonizer. So the first challenge for us in terms of understanding the rights of nature, the rights of Mother Earth as it's referred to, is to ask ourselves, who were we before even the concept of rights came along? Who were we before we signed different treaties? Who were we before the settlers came along and divided our territories? And does that matter to us? And if we recognize our brothers and sisters as part of our nations, then none of this should divide us going forward. And as long as we are continuing to make these divisions, the harder it is for us to make the arguments about our integrity as Indigenous nations. So I offer that to you as an introduction to what I'm about to say. Collectively, we are told, and the message that we get, no matter where we turn, whether we're in the east, the north, the south, or the west, the impression we're left with is that the earth has these things called resources. and that we have a right to those resources. And that's the paradigm or the approach that's being advocated by every nation state and by every law that's put into play. Now, the reality is, in many instances, Indigenous people have started to believe that. Primarily the leadership that I see throughout the country in my travels, we actually start to believe the words that we've been told. And we get into these positions where we come from a position of weakness as opposed to a position of strength. And that's our obligation, is to make sure that we always come from a position of strength. And we'll have that as long as we're connected to our original instructions, and we'll have that as long as we're connected to each other as full, sovereign nations with integrity and credibility intact. So, if we are to believe that the earth is filled with these resources, the next step is to convince us that those are infinite, that they go on forever, and that we can all benefit from that. The other side of that is our experience and our teachers and our traditions tell us otherwise. And then the question becomes, what are we to do in this time that we find ourselves? We all get reduced to the material poverty, the marginalization that we feel in our communities. And it's real. I understand that, I believe that, I see that, I've experienced that. That's the challenge that we face, no matter what we do, whether we're in leadership or whether we're elders, students, people in our communities. Who were we before all of this was told to us that this is the way we should exist? Do we understand what that story is, and do we believe in that story? And what decisions do we make knowing that in this time? If we believe that the earth is filled with these resources that need to be extracted, then we buy into the model or to the idea that the earth is in the business of liquidating itself. And our people, our teachings, tell us exactly the opposite of that. The discussion as well has talked about, that this is the nature of capitalism. I want to make this point. Indigenous people, no matter where you turn in the world, have been impacted by capitalism, certainly, but they've also been impacted by other expressions of economy. So the left and the right in this world that we're supposedly either fitting into or resisting or struggling, that's the Western paradigm, that's the Western worldview. Indigenous people have another worldview. And it doesn't matter whether you're left or right. For us, we need to understand that the integrity and credibility of our nationhood depends on us being able to distinguish ourselves relative to that world. And that's a value system that at the end of the day we either are in touch with or we're not. So I want to share something with you here that has been talked about before, but maybe not in this context. Certainly, I think it's relevant. If I went to any one of you here, and you had a phone, or you had a camera, or you had a computer, and I went to grab that, and I ran off with it, you could accuse me and you could tell me that I'm stealing from you. And that would be true. That's how it's understood. I'm taking something that belongs to you, and I'm taking it for myself. There are laws against that. We put them in place. But what we don't do is put laws in place to protect our children and grandchildren. We can find laws that protect our space, but we don't find laws that protect our time. So it's okay for corporations, okay for governments, in our collective name, to steal from our children and grandchildren. What I mean by that is those resources that are there, that have been hoarded by that 1%. That's in fact what's going on. People are stealing from your children and grandchildren to the point where they have no future to inherit at the rate they're going. So why is it we have a system that allows that to happen? That's the question I would pose to you. When you go home, when you have community meetings, when you have discussion, and you're being hit with these proposals for development, whatever the case may be, how do you counter that? Why is it that that's a legitimate discussion that we can have? How is it that our participation in that comes to the point where we don't even talk about stealing? We're told, you know, we've got this great plan, we've got this great development, we've got this opportunity for you and your people, and you'll have jobs and you'll be compensated. But what's missing is that on our part at least, we don't talk about this obligation to the future in any real sense as to what that means. So we allow all these corporations and all these governments with their policies to steal from us, to steal our future. And there is no penalty for that. And there's no mechanism to address that or to make that something we can account for in this time. So I would suggest to you that, you know, stealing in time and space is a relevant discussion that we should be having in our communities across the land. And to the extent that we might want to enact policies, legislation, change the way things are done, I would suggest to you that that's one place we should start. This is a discussion on the rights of nature, the rights of Mother Earth. I offer that to you in that context. Thank you.